You'll meet all your enemies
Rain Chop!
in this startling new dimension.
They're right in my face!
In the R-Zone.
Here comes Wolf!
Mortal Kombat 3 lives in the R-Zone.
In the mid-1990s, Tiger Electronics was everywhere. Walk into any toy store and you'd find entire shelves filled with their handheld games. They weren't sophisticated, they weren't cutting edge, but they were affordable, they were recognizable, and they were wildly successful. Tiger had built an empire by taking popular movies, cartoons, and video games and turning them into simple LCD handhelds that almost every kid wanted at some point in their lives. For years, that formula worked perfectly, and then Tiger decided it wanted something bigger. So, instead of making cheap handheld distractions, the company set its sights on the future. Virtual reality was the hottest buzzword in technology. Nintendo was making headlines with the Virtual Boy, and suddenly Tiger wanted to compete in a market far beyond the one that made them famous. The result was the R-Zone, a gaming system so strange, so uncomfortable, and so fundamentally flawed that it would become one of the most infamous failures in video game history. This is the rise and fall of the Tiger R-Zone. So, to understand how the R-Zone happened, you first have to understand just how successful Tiger Electronics was during the late 1980s and early 1990s. While Nintendo and Sega battled for dominance in living rooms, Tiger quietly carved out its own corner of the gaming world. Their secret wasn't advanced technology, it was accessibility. Tiger specialized in inexpensive handheld games built around popular licenses. Whether it was Sonic the Hedgehog, Street Fighter, Batman, Jurassic Park, or The Little Mermaid, Tiger seemed to have a handheld version of everything. These games used simple LCD technology with pre-drawn graphics and limited animations. Compared to a Game Boy, for example, they were primitive. But compared to their price tag, they were irresistible. Parents loved them because they were affordable. Kids loved them because they featured characters they already knew, and Tiger, of course, sold millions. The company became so successful that it started believing it could compete with the major players in gaming. And instead of simply licensing popular brands, Tiger wanted its own gaming platform. And that ambition collided perfectly with the technology craze of the mid-1990s. So, at the time, virtual reality seemed like the future. Movies, magazines, and television programs constantly talked about VR changing the world. And even though the technology wasn't really ready yet, companies everywhere were trying to capitalize on the excitement. Nintendo launched the Virtual Boy in 1995, promising a new kind of immersive gaming experience. And while the Virtual Boy would eventually become a failure itself, its existence proved that consumers were fascinated by the idea. So, Tiger saw an opportunity. At the American International Toy Fair in 1995, the company unveiled the R-Zone. The device promised an affordable virtual reality experience for just $29.99. Compared to other gaming systems, that price seemed almost unbelievable. Now, at first glance, the R-Zone looked futuristic. Players attached a headset to their face and inserted game cartridges into the unit. The red and black color scheme made it look like something from a science fiction movie. The marketing leaned heavily into the futuristic image, presenting the R-Zone as the next evolution of gaming. Unfortunately, the futuristic appearance was hiding some very old technology. You see, the R-Zone wasn't actually creating virtual reality. In fact, it wasn't really doing much of anything at all. The secret was that the cartridges contained almost all of the gaming hardware. Each cartridge functioned similarly to the Tiger's older LCD handheld games, and instead of rendering graphics in real time, the games used pre-drawn images built directly into the display. So when inserted into the headset, a small light illuminated the LCD screen. The image was then reflected through a tiny mirror positioned in front of one eye. So rather than looking at a screen directly, players were essentially looking at a reflection of a reflection. The result was exactly as bad as it sounds. The image appeared in a single shade of red. It was blurry, it was difficult to focus on, and often produced ghosting effects that made gameplay simply frustrating. The headset itself was uncomfortable and required constant adjustment to keep the image visible. Even slight movements could throw everything out of alignment. Playing the R-Zone often felt less like gaming and more like trying to solve a complicated eye exam. Things became even worse because the system only projected images into one eye, so many players found themselves closing their other eye just to concentrate on what was happening. After only a short session, headaches and eye strain became common complaints. Tiger quickly realized there was a problem. So, in an effort to salvage the platform, the company released several redesigns. The R-Zone Super Screen replaced the headset with a tabletop display that eliminated some of the discomfort. And later, the R-Zone XPG attempted to create a more portable experience. But none of these revisions could solve the core issue. The technology simply wasn't good enough. If the hardware was disappointing, the software wasn't much better. Tiger leveraged its greatest strength by securing licenses from major entertainment brands. The R-Zone library included names like Mortal Kombat 3, Batman Forever, Virtua Fighter, Indy 500, Panzer Dragoon, and even Star Wars. On paper, these sounded like incredible additions, but in reality, they were little more than glorified LCD games. Cartridges carried famous titles, but they couldn't replicate the experiences that made those games popular in the first place. Mortal Kombat 3 wasn't the fast-paced arcade fighter people knew and loved. Instead, it became a collection of flickering red figures moving awkwardly across the screen. Virtua Fighter suffered the same fate. Panzer Dragoon, famous for its groundbreaking 3D graphics on the Sega Saturn, was reduced to simplistic targets floating through a blurry red landscape. The problem wasn't simply that the games looked bad, they all just felt the same. No matter what logo appeared on the cartridge, players were essentially getting variations of the same limited LCD gameplay Tiger had been selling for years. The illusion of variety disappeared pretty quickly. Consumers began realizing that the Futuristic console wasn't offering anything truly new. Critics were ruthless. Reviewers attacked nearly every aspect of the system. The uncomfortable headset, the poor display quality, the weak audio, and the repetitive gameplay all became common targets. Publications consistently ranked the R-Zone among the worst gaming devices available, and players agreed. Many buyers expected some kind of affordable virtual reality experience and instead found themselves staring at blurry red graphics through a difficult-to-position mirror. The gap between expectation and reality was absolutely enormous. Even the sound was disappointing. The system relied on a single mono speaker that produced the same basic beeps and effects found in Tiger's earlier handhelds. There wasn't even a headphone jack. Everything about the R-Zone felt cheap, and sales quickly reflected that reality. While Nintendo, Sega, and Sony battled for market share, the R-Zone struggled to find an audience. Retailers began discounting inventory, consumers moved on, and by 1997, the platform was effectively dead. The entire lifespan of the R-Zone lasted barely 2 years. Yet, the story doesn't end with failure. In one of the strangest twists in toy industry history, Tiger Electronics survived. Despite the collapse of the R-Zone, the company remained valuable because of its licensing business and toy expertise. And in 1998, Hasbro acquired Tiger Electronics for approximately $335 million. And then, something remarkable happened. The same company responsible for one of gaming's most notorious failures helped create one of the biggest toy sensations of the decade. And that toy was Furby. Virtually overnight, Furby became a global phenomenon. Millions were sold. Kids couldn't get enough of them. The company that had struggled to build the future of gaming suddenly found massive success with a furry electronic creature that spoke its own language. It's one of the most dramatic rebounds in toy industry history, I can definitely say. Now today, the R-Zone occupies a strange place in gaming culture. Nobody remembers it as a great console, nobody argues that it was misunderstood, and most people agree it was a total failure. But you have to admit, it's also pretty fascinating. The R-Zone represents a moment when technology companies were willing to experiment, even if those experiments ended pretty badly. It stands as a reminder that innovation without execution rarely succeeds. Tiger had identified trends correctly. Virtual reality was definitely exciting. Portable gaming was definitely growing. Immersive experiences were absolutely the future. The company simply lacked the technology to deliver on those promises, and the result was a console that became famous for all the wrong reasons. Yet that's exactly why people still talk about it today. The Tiger R-Zone may have been uncomfortable, disappointing, and commercially disastrous, but it remains one of the most memorable gaming failures ever created. It's a red-tinted relic from a time when companies believed the future was right around the corner, even when the technology wasn't ready to get there. And sometimes the stories of gaming's biggest failures end up being just as interesting as its greatest successes.